Wham. Welcome back. It is Mindbender Mental Performance Podcast. I am your host, Kowalski. Thank you so much for joining me today. It is Monday, July the 1st in the year of our Lord 2024. There you are, here we are, as we continue down our book breakdown mini seminar. The book, Let Them Play, a parenting and coaching guide to youth sports. The author, Enrique Bayrones, former Licey baseball player in the Dominican, and the chapter 4, Planting Seeds. Back to the book. Our job as a parent at the ages from 1 to 6 years old is simply to introduce our kids to all sorts of various sports and to do everything in our power to make it a pleasurable experience that the kids are eager to repeat. This stage is not about competition. It is about exposing young athletes to the joy of sport and all the sports that may call to them. It is about developing their desire to play. When I think back to my vague memories of sports in my early life, I remember these things. Number 1, whacking and chucking tennis balls with my sister and parents. Number 2, ripping down a ski mountain between my dad's legs. Number 3, going to karate studio to play while my dad would teach. Number 4, playing tackle football with my best friend in his front yard. Number 5, playing baseball with my neighbor. Number 6, scoring a boatload of goals for the, quote, Orange Crush, end quote, playing soccer for the first time. Number 7, firing a basketball at some sort of a circular metal thing. My parents were planting seeds for trees which they knew very well I may never sit under, but they continued to plant them anyway. The greatest lesson I learned in these years was an immense love for playing sports, and even more importantly, a love for being active. When it came time for my wife Tara and me to introduce our kids to the world, we both thought about what we loved as kids, and then we were aggressive about doing everything in our power to provide similar experiences. Obviously, we all come from different backgrounds and available resources, but there are a few of the sports that we strategically try to, quote, plant the seed, end quote, for the sole purpose of providing an awesome base for whatever our kids inevitably decided that they loved and wanted to pursue. I want to emphasize that we did not introduce these sports to our kids at this age with the intention of turning them into child prodigies with professional sports aspirations. It was simply about exposing them to various sports and then figuring out what brought the most amount of joy to their lives. I mean, we'll stop right there for a minute. Our job as parents from 1 to 6 is simply to introduce our kids to all sorts of various sports. No matter who you are, if you ever have an opportunity, and as a kid, as a player, as a young kid, as a young go-hard who plays sports at an elite level, we're not going to call you a baseball player because there's certainly much more to you and your identity than baseball player. You're a person who plays sports. So when we're talking about this and we're breaking it down, I think it's really important to emphasize the author's perspective. The guy's been to the mountain. He's sipped the juice. He's peeked behind the curtain. But what he's not saying here is that he went manically towards a particular sport because that's what he thought he had to do in order to get him there. And in fact, he knows what to do, and he's not doing that. So oftentimes we see so many helicopter parents who want in some way their child's athletic pursuits to be an own manifestation of their unresolved athletic pursuits. And we got to stop doing that. We got to fight the urge at all costs. So, and if you talk to any young kid about the $1 million question, he says, "What do I know now that I wish I would have known when I was 9, when I was 10, when I was 12, when I was 15?" That's the $1 million question. What we should be asking as parents to other parents, especially people who have been to the top of the mountain, who have a perspective that you do not have. What do you know now about parenting a young athlete that you wish you would have known? I think it's a very important question to begin to ask. So, and then he says here, the author Enrique Bayrones, I believe in America it's pronounced Eric Burns. Yeah, back to the book. The author says, it is about developing their desire to play. I was watching a documentary about I believe it was a docu-series about coaching and about some of the most elite coaches there are. One of the ones was Patrick Montague. He's a tennis coach. He was Serena Williams' coach. He had some really extraordinary things to say in there, and some that I'll take with me as I continue to coach mental performance skills to people who play sports. One thing he said, and I'd be remiss not to mention it, is never be afraid to be fired. Think about that. Clear eyes, full hearts. Don't be afraid to be fired, because you got to be able to be a truth teller. You got a lot of yes men around a lot of athletes, and what they need is less yes men and more truth tellers. Back to the book, it is about developing their desire to play. And then back to the docuseries, there was another one with Doc Rivers on there, and Doc Rivers, he never says, I'm going to basketball practice. I'm going to practice. We're going to a game. We have a game tonight. All he ever says is, we're going to go play basketball. We get to play a basketball game tonight. So really remembering at its core, at its essence, it's play. It's play. So, yeah, beautifully said there. And then planting the trees of which the shade we may never sit under. What a beautiful concept, as adults and as young people, we need to think about the legacy that we leave behind. We need to think about the trees that we are planting now, that we're going to be long gone once they bear fruit, once they're able to provide shade for others. And that fruit and shade comes in the form of these philosophies, of these ways of life, of these characteristic traits. So I think what we're going to find, as the great Ichabod Kane gives me a call here during the pod, is that once we're able to realize that it is just play, then we're able to plant the seeds, not just for ourselves, but for others. So again, back to the book. He goes on to say, it was simply about exposing them to various sports and then figuring out what brought the most amount of joy to their lives outside. I know it is not a sport, but it's a great place to start. Go outside, chase butterflies, play in the grass, jump hopscotch, hike around, get in the water, climb trees. This is where kids start to learn how to move their bodies and how much better they feel afterwards. And it is very important, and it is very importantly self-directed. Throw them in the backyard and lock the door. One thing I say, and then we'll get back to the book, but let's stop right there for a second. One thing I tell the Elijah and Emma every day is, have you had your water sip, and have you stood in the grass? So it's always sweat before screens, but what are the actions that get us outside, that get us on the earth? So a little grass grounding, a little sun, getting some water in you when you wake up. Just the process of being outside can then have this really beautiful positive ripple effect. So it's like, if I wake up and have my morning mineral cocktail, stand on the footboard and do some grass grounding and have a coffee, then I'm going to listen to my devotional. If I listen to my devotional, then I'm going to do my AM journal. Once I do my AM journal, I'm going to have my foundation for the day. I'm going to have a laser focus for what I need to accomplish for the day. And then I'm going to do a session. If I do a session, then I'm going to come into the house more apt to wrap my arms around my little dream maker, Alyssa, for 20 seconds and embrace her and tell her that I love her. Good. Back to the book, skiing. As soon as the kids could talk, they were on skis. Living in Lake Tahoe, we didn't have much of a choice. It even meant that Tara had to learn. Running. We tried to teach the kids about the physical and mental rewards of running very early on. It's still a rule in our house that there are 0 electronics until a mile is complete. Surfing. As soon as they could swim, we got them on a board and in the ocean. Letting kids experience and understand the power of the ocean at an early age has a tremendous impact and teaches them the extreme importance of always respecting Mother Nature. We'll stop right there, because I think the author here, Enrique Bayrones, has a very beautiful perspective. As you ever meet somebody from a surf town? Everybody's so chill and cool for the most part. Or maybe from a mountain community, like a skiing community, same thing. It's because these folks are always faced with their own impermanence by how large and awe-inspiring and profound that kind of nature can be. So, yeah, Always respecting Mother Nature. You got to get out there and have a personal relationship with it to respect it. Back to the book. Skateboarding. Around the block on the boards with the kids became one of our favorite pastimes. Core strength, situational awareness, and balance are all on full display and have tremendous benefits. Karate, a must for all kids as soon as they are old enough and the instructor is willing to take them. Age 5 or 6 typically is a good starting point. This is often the first introduction to real discipline outside of the house. The self discipline, self defense, body awareness, and control that are learned are all invaluable tools for life. Gymnastics, another must sport, in my opinion, that provides an all around athletic base for all other sports. It is also usually one of the first sports kids can participate in. A key place to develop vestibular sense, or as we call it, court awareness, knowing where one's body is in space and how it is moving. Stop right there. Such an important point. You know, the three core principles of my coaching approach and who I was mentored by along the way, the Ken Revises, the Harvey Dorfmans, the Ichabod Canes, and the Enrique Byroneses, is very much awareness, strategy, plan. So this awareness is the first step, the awareness of the body, how it's moving in space, and how we can then identify how to tap into that body on a deeper level, that awareness. Back to the book, tennis. And by the way, Kowalski, you're in all white. You're never in all white. You're always in all black. Well, when you know, this is the first week of Wimbledon. So of course I'm wearing all white. Tennis, back to the book. A racket, a ball, and a wall. Simple introduction to hand-eye coordination at its finest. Front yard baseball. I fired tennis ball cheddar cheese to the kids at an early age, and to this point, they still haven't seen a faster pitcher. T-ball is cool. TB cheddar cheese is better. Plus, it takes some solid nerve to stand in against it. Train hard to play easy. Stop right there. You know, we can't expect to do anything in a game, in competition, that we're not preparing and practicing for. You don't rise to the occasion. You don't rise to the moment. You sink to the level of your preparation. Back to the book. Football, just an object to throw and something to tackle. Kids like throwing things and hitting things. Body awareness benefits are huge. Had Enrique Byrones, the author here, hold it right here, and then we'll go back to the book. Had he continued to play football, I'm not sure what would have happened. Who knows? Maybe he and Tom Brady, which was his high school rival football team, maybe the roles would have been reversed. Maybe this author, Enrique Byrones, could have been a 7-time Super Bowl winner. And maybe then the trajectory for the great Tom Brady may have been baseball. I guess we'll never know. And they were on their path for a particular purpose. Good. Put to best use. Back to the book. Soccer, an easy and fantastic introduction to team sports. Any sport that makes exercise fun at this age is a great option. Footwork and teamwork benefits will last beyond the soccer field. We'll stop it right there real quickly. You know, I remember reading an article about Drew Brees, and Drew Brees saying, no shot. I would have been the quarterback that I was for as long as I was had it not been for tennis. Back to the book. Organized sports before age 6. Because he could hit the ball really well for his age, when Colton was 3, Tara tried to put him in T-ball. Bad idea. Colton was playing some variation of shortstop, and every time the ball was hit, he would run and get it. The issue was that if the ball was hit to second, third, or the outfield, he would get those too. That-a-way, Biggity Biscuit. Back to the book. Eventually, the coach drew a circle at shortstop and told Colton he had to stay in the circle. That's the exact time Colton walked off the field, handed me his glove, and said, Dad, I don't want to play baseball anymore, Daddy. He quit for 3 years. The coach's intentions were fine, and I imagine he drew the circle so the other kids would not have to worry about Colton running over to get the ball. That said, we learned that day that nobody was going to keep Colton, a.k.a. Biscuit, in a box. Over the next 3 years, we would play catch all the time while slowly introducing him to the infamous TB cheddar cheese game. The goal at this age is to teach the kid to love the sport and to develop the habit of activity. Kids can play organized sports as long as the emphasis is on fun and development, not competition and rules. Note to all coaches and parents, the development of throwing a ball and hitting a ball happens at a pretty rapid rate. Catching a baseball, on the other hand, will be the last of the beautiful baseball trifecta to master for the young go hard. When Colton was 4, we took him to the Super Bowl in Santa Clara, and we brought our gloves and baseball so we could play catch during the pregame tailgate. At this point, we were playing catch nearly every day, and upon his relentless request, I had just recently introduced the hard baseball as opposed to the soft ones we had been using for a number of years. He loved the fact that he finally got to throw a real baseball. I tossed him a few to get comfortable, then slowly began to pick up the velocity. He was swiping the balls out of the air like he was Ricky Henderson in his prime, and even picked a few of my errant throws. I remember turning toward the stadium in the background and thinking how cool it was that Biscuit's first day of real catch with a real baseball was happening at the Super Bowl. I couldn't help but get a bit nostalgic thinking of the games of catch that I had with my dad out in front of Candlestick Park before a 49ers or Giants game. I then fired Colton one last ball before we headed to the stadium. Whack! The ball hit him square in the nose, and blood began to profusely squirt everywhere. Apparently, we jumped to the hard ball just a bit too soon. Catching a ball is difficult for kids to learn, mainly because they catch with their non-dominant hand. There are so many ways to position the body and hand when it comes to properly catching a baseball. For instance, forehand, backhand, underhand, and overhead are all ways to catch a baseball, and most catches actually happen to be some variation or combination of the four. Ultimately, it's up to you, but my recommendation would be to leave the hard ball at home until the kids are at least 6 and extremely comfortable catching a ball in all directions. Using a softer baseball or even a tennis ball is much better at a young age anyway, because you can throw them way harder without any fear of an emergency room visit. And we are live here on No Filter Network, the world's premier live streaming interactive event and podcasting hosting platform. So I might have to stop for a moment, take a sip of water. Maybe I put a little Himalayan pink salt and lemon in that morning mineral cocktail in the afternoon. We call that afternoon delight. Back to the book, Letting Go. Arm strength with Biscuit was never an issue, but I was a bit concerned about his throwing mechanics. They seemed a bit short-armed to me, who just so happens to be a long arm throwing outfielder. In the, quote, planting seed, end quote years, I consistently did everything I could to get him to lengthen his throwing motion, but he would always revert back to what was natural to him. Finally, when he was 9 and throwing absolute gas on the mound, as well as throwing runners out from behind the dish, I realized how grateful I was that he never listened to me. This was one of the very first times that I realized that in order to get the best out of my kid, or in any other kid for that matter, we oftentimes need to step back, stop coaching, and let their natural order take over. You know what's so powerful about the system I came up in coaching with Bernsey is this total radical acceptance of letting the kid develop, of not overcoaching, of staying out of the way, of bolstering a kid's own uniqueness and creativity, and that it's not a one-size-fits-all system. It's not a cookie cutter system. It's specific for each and every individual. So I think that's a really powerful and poignant point here. Here is a former 12-year big league guy who's like, I'm going to let the kid develop at his own. But what I will do is play with him. I will be involved and I'll play every single day. And, our kids sure as shit might not listen to us, but they will imitate us. Back to the book. Bottom line, the planting seed years should be spent doing exactly that, planting seeds. What inevitably grows from the seeds we plant is not always up to us, and oftentimes a flower we never expected will blossom. Boy, that is rich. Now the book's getting fun. Woo, strap on. We'll be back tomorrow. We're going to be back tomorrow with it, but planting trees. So go out there and plant today, y'all. Plant trees of which the shade you will never sit under. Leave it better than you found it. Will the world be a better place because you exist? If you're listening to this pod, probably. Okay? And remember, not every day is going to be great, but it don't have to be terrible. It begins before it begins, and the best is yet to come. Be good to yourselves and be good to others. And if you wanted to dive into this future New York Times bestseller, I'm assuming that you guys can find this at ericburns.com. That's ERICBYRNES.com. And while you're there, pick yourself up an ericburns.com footboard. All right? It starts from the feet and goes up from there. Boom. See you on the other side. The best is yet to come.